Council time, Mr. Clark, time is 6:01. I'm going to call this budget committee meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Gallo, seconded by Councillor Weiss. Comments? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, no delegations. We have two items. First one, 6.1, which is 2023 budget information. The recommendation is that report number FIN 23-002 be received. And two, that staff work with the Finance Advisory Committee to develop a ward budget policy and that it be established in the 2024 budget. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Weiss, thank you. Second. Councillor Thompson, comments or questions on this one? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. Interesting. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward and giving us some information and insight about our comparables around other municipalities in regards to remuneration. I did notice that we didn't really touch on, assistance and such, and I really am not advocating for that, but it'd be interesting to know how that's weighted with the other municipalities. I did reach out to a few that were on that list that did confirm that they did. I'm happy not having one, but I do think it would be a good idea if we were to at least defer this to the governance committee to review and come back with a recommendation.
Mr. Clerk, I'm not sure if we have a governance committee yet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Mr. Mayor. Not at the moment. It's not proposed in the committee report that council considered at GC last week, but certainly going forward, when it does come time to review the compensation this term, that we would propose one.
Councillor.
Thank you. So sorry, just maybe I just misheard. So we are not electing a governance committee, or we are going to be electing a governance committee? Was that part of the committee list?
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not at the moment.
Councillor.
Okay, thank you. So if we wanted to, we could elect a governance committee to review this and maybe some stuff even on the ward policies, guidelines or whatnot to review as well. Is that something that we could decide to put forward between now and council?
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that would be possible at the council meeting, that is.
Councillor.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That would be my preference as well.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I would agree with that. The second part of the recommendation that staff work with the FAC to develop a ward budget policy and that it be established in the 2024 budget. Is that related to, I guess, my comments about having a budget for each ward that would be used within the ward for whatever reasons?
I believe so, but Ms. Winger Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
Councillor.
Okay. I guess it's not a bad place for that type of financial discussion. Well, I'll put some thought to that, whether a nominal fee for this year and a full out policy for 2024. But I'll put some thought to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Callahan, second time.
Thank you. And just a quick question. If this was to go to FAC for 2024, I guess I gather that could lend some time for the governance committee to review that as well. Would that be an appropriate spot, or just a question through Mr. Mayor to clerk or
Ms. Wainwright
Ms.
Van
Wainwright
Kessel.
Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the plan for this policy would be specifically for spending on ward budgets. So it would be very narrow focused on that element of it. The governance work would have a more broad mandate.
Councillor.
Okay, perfect. All right, I get that. Okay, I mean, it makes sense to me that we have some sort of policy in place to determine what that budget would look like. Through Mr. Mayor, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, would this also encompass the current budget that we allocate right now as a pooled budget that we use right now, or is this something that's in addition or separate?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it would depend on the items that are included within the overall policy. So this, if it's for more discretionary items related specifically towards, this would be in addition to what's there.
Councillor.
Okay, so moving forward at right now, I gather we can just utilize the funds that are allocated the way that we use now, which is in a big pool, and that's kind of how we conduct our business as a ward councillor moving forward until this review has happened.
Councillor, I'll get Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel the answer, but I would say that there's $21,000 in that, and that is for conferences, and that's what we've traditionally used it for. And I think that's what the recommendation from staff is for us to create a policy on what additional types of things can we spend those funds on. And so at the current moment, it would be spent for conferences. And basically that's it, unless we create a reason for us to be able to spend those funds for different reasons. And I
Okay.
think that's why staff are recommending develop a policy.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
Yep, no, that answers my question.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Garner, second time.
Thank you. Can I ask why this wouldn't be something that would be discussed at the council table as opposed to in fact?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically any of our financial policies start through the FAC committee and they do come to council, or they could even come on a GC agenda after that.
So it would come to council. Councillor.
Yes, I realized that it would. I just was wondering why we wouldn't have a larger discussion at the council table. So you're saying this is policy?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is policy items. We generally have a very good discussion at FAC. So that helps give some of the direction and shape the final version that does come to committee and or council.
And if members of council want to come to FAC, I mean, I know we're always welcome. So we would just be able to speak at the meeting what our views were if we want to discuss it before at the council meeting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo, second time.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on under the executive summary. The fourth or the fifth, fourth point down. The initial approved capital budget authority for a project can change based on the town's governance model. The information that's in there is, we're not changing anything. That's already established. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. That's already established.
And that
Council.
last point, moving forward, the town will report on capital project budgets authority in-year changes as part of the annual budget process. That is changing.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so that will
Oh,
change.
your mic. Your mic.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that will change. It'll provide more transparency. So council will see that.
Councillor.
So through you, when we say in-year changes, so we're only going to report though during the budget process, not throughout the year.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
We were planning to report through the budget, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, we were planning to report through the budget process, but if council would like, we could also include it in the interim reporting that we do as well.
Councillor.
Okay, and I probably should know this, but when it speaks to So I'm just going to find it. I don't remember what the terminology is, but when multiple projects, if there are, I guess, residual funds to multiple projects, you're allowed to shift them within a capital plan.
Ms. Warren Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's flexibility within a capital program, which is only available for certain asset management type programs, which includes fleet, roads, sewers, facilities, and we're recommending IT, but
Counselor?
not any growth projects.
Counselor?
So a capital plan would be something like fleets or buying vehicles. We've got given authority for X number of vehicles. After they're purchased, there's some residual funds, or we purchased many of them, but there's one that's over budget, but some of the others are under budget and we can afford to purchase that last one, and it goes ahead.
Ms. Warren Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so long as they are replacements and that the scope has not changed on the overall project, yes, there is that flexibility.
Does it
Counselor?
matter, through you, Mr. Mayor, does it matter the variance on how much that vehicle was off?
Ms. Warren Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the use of capital programs, the variance isn't part of the analysis. The part that we look at is does council have provided the approval? Is it part of an asset management program, one of the ones that are specified? And does it fit within the rules that we have for capital programs? So the dollar amount isn't a factor of that. It's more about the actual scope and the work that is approved by council.
Counselor?
Okay. I have another question, but it doesn't relate, so I'll have to ask another time.
Any other comments or questions? To add, what's that, Counselor? Okay, but I'm just wondering, there is no,
We just that council, the council remuneration reviewed in 20.
Okay. Okay. You okay with that, Counselor? You want to put your amendment, that council, can you say that, Mr. Clerk, please?
Through Mr. Mayor, as their governance committee hasn't formally been created yet, I just suggest removing governance committee from the amendment and that council compensation or council remuneration be reviewed in 2023 in anticipation for the 2024 multi-year budget.
Counselor? Okay, moved, seconder. Counselor Garner, thank you. Counselor Thompson?
Sorry, just for
To the
clarity,
amendment.
to the amendment, just for clarity. In the past, the governance committee was struck towards the end of the term to make recommendations for the subsequent term. Councillor Gilliland's proposing that it not be done that way, that she would prefer it to be done immediately. Is that correct?
I don't know, Counselor.
Yeah.
Yes. Counselor? That's all? Oh. Counselor Gallo? Okay, go ahead.
And just to also be clear, it was never done at the end of last term. And it probably should have been done at the end of last term. And I suspect that's why that's being proposed to be done now.
Counselor Garner? Okay. Counselor Thompson, second time to the amendment.
To Councillor Gallo's point, it's true. Although we saw a huge influx of notice of motion towards the end of the term from everybody, nobody put that forward. So it is kind of curious that all of a sudden it's at the top of the list, council compensation.
Anyone else to the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment? It's, can you just say it again, Mr. Clerk? You have it up? There it is. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. If there are no other comments, call the vote. We get the. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next, 6.2. Aurora Cultural Center 2023 funding request. Recommendations: 1, that report number CMS 23-003 be received. 2, that the request for the 2023 operating grant to the Aurora Cultural Center in the amount of $454,300 be approved. And 3, that up to a maximum of $175,600 in funding from the Aurora Town Square operating budget to offset any relocation-driven operating expenses experienced by the Aurora Cultural Center be approved. And 4, that the requested increase to the base funding for the 2023 operating grant to the Aurora Cultural Center in the amount of $84,460 be approved. And 5, that the Aurora Cultural Center base funding increase of $84,460 be funded by an equivalent one-time contribution from the tax rate stabilization reserve, which is, I'm seeing here, option 3. Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Gill, and second by Councillor Gardner. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor. I would just like to inquire about point 5. When we were going through budget, we did save $150,000 on the sidewalks on Henderson. So why wouldn't we just leave it? Okay,
That's capital.
capital. Right.
This is operational.
So we're calling this base funding. Well, we've been calling it base funding. So base funding would assume that it's continued year after year.
Mary Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it depends on the type of source that the base funding comes from. So if it's a draw from the tax stabilization reserve, it would be essentially a one-time funding because that's for temporary funding. If it was an increase to the overall levy, which is one of the other options, then that would be in there in the levy in perpetuity unless we did a reduction in a future year to the budget.
Councillor.
So, okay, so I go back to my question. I didn't say it properly, but there will be a savings of $150,000 that would decrease the tax levy. So why wouldn't we just put this? No, I'm really off base.
I can get Ms. Mary Van Kessel to explain it if you like.
I'm trying to figure out how we can put it in the budget so it's just not a one time, so that next year the cultural center doesn't have to come back and we go through this.
We would have to increase the tax levy or cut another service.
Okay, you know, and we will be next year, a year farther along with respect to the town square. So this may resolve itself anyway. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I agree with the funding. I agree with this being part of the base. I don't agree with us having to do this every year. I'm okay with this year as a one-time funding source, but we have to figure out a way to include this in our regular budget. Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we get a balance of the rate stabilization fund, please?
Sure. Ms. Mary Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as of August 31st, 2022, the reserve had 9.3 million.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
And thank you. I would agree that this should be the last year that we have this ongoing discussion. I think as Town Square gets finalized, as the governance model gets finalized, I'm sure the cultural center and everybody else would like to see a little bit of closure on this and so that they can plan going forward. So I too hope that this is the last year that we have this conversation, and going forward in the 2024 budget cycle and discussions that this all gets resolved.
Q, any other comments or questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. You guys did listen to me tonight. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Or should, motion to, Councillor Gilliland, second by Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow night.
Bring the budget.